Welcome. If your thoughts have the power to make you sick, could they also hold the power to heal you? From a neurochemical standpoint, you are training your mind and body to function as one coherent unit. And when your body learns how to do this better than your conscious mind, when it becomes automatic, instinctive, effortless, then that's when true transformation happens. You literally become the knowledge you've been practicing. So ask yourself, if someone can learn to think, act, and feel differently, wouldn't that be reflected in their physical health? Emotions are simply the chemical residue of past experiences. But what does that really mean? If I'm feeling something in the present moment, am I reliving a memory or responding to now? When emotional coherence takes hold, something deeper emerges, resonance. In that state, the person softens, relaxes into their heart, not tense, not distracted, but awake. Present, that's the signature of a revelation. A deep moment of insight. Joe, I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. We share a mutual friend, Peter Park. He's trained the best of the best, elite athletes, world champions, and he's helped me tremendously. Not just physically, but as a friend. One day, he pulled me aside and said, "Mike, do you know Joe Dispenza?" I said, "I don't." And he told me, "You need to. That was the beginning of all this. What's your connection with Peter?" Peter is one of a kind. He has the mindset of a true champion. He's incredibly talented, yes, but more than that, he's worked hard to develop his skills. During the pandemic, all the gyms closed down. I used to train at one, but when it shut, I asked Peter if I could use his when no one else was around. That's how we started connecting more. Eventually, he offered to train with me, and I said yes. These days, I even train with his 25-year-old son. Peter once said something that I think sets the tone for this entire conversation. He told me, "Sometimes I'll mention one of my kids, and soon after, Joe will call them personally. He checks in, asks how they're doing, and truly cares." That moved me, because with all that you do, all the work, all the teaching, you still find the time to be there for people. Peter is intense, incredibly skilled, and like you said, has this ability to bring out the best in others. That's both an art and a science. Coming from him, those words about you told me everything I needed to know. You've built a life of giving, and in doing so, you created a movement. I'm fascinated not only by the science you teach, but also by the lifestyle you've created. Still, let's begin with the science. In your book, Becoming Supernatural, you open with a powerful idea. I have to share what I've seen, what I've experienced, even if that means being called crazy or a misfit. And you took that risk. Thank you for having the courage to do that. Well, I never planned for any of this. It all began when I was hit by a truck during a triathlon. I suffered 6 broken vertebrae. The medical recommendation was spinal surgery using Harrington rods. At the time, I was in my early 20s. I owned a martial arts school, a yoga studio, and I trained regularly for competitions. One day I was in peak physical condition, and the next I couldn't move. I couldn't imagine living dependent on medications or with metal rods fused to my spine. The injuries were serious. Bone fragments were compressing my spinal cord. There was neural arch damage, and I was facing possible paralysis. That's when I asked myself, could my mind influence my body? I was 24 years old, and it worked. It actually worked. When something that profound happens, you can't just return to life as it was. But I'll tell you, it wasn't easy. I couldn't control my thoughts. And when you're in crisis, your focus naturally shifts to what you don't want instead of what you do. Changing that wiring, especially at that age, was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Once I healed, I made it my mission to study others who had experienced spontaneous remissions. Some were treated conventionally, others weren't. But there was a common thread. Somehow, they all healed unexpectedly. I traveled to 17 different countries to interview them. By then, I was about 29 years old. You said, "It worked." I want to understand what exactly worked and how did you do it? I set out to see if my mind could influence my biology, and I came to two key insights. First, there is an intelligence within us that keeps us alive. It beats our hearts. It digests our food. It coordinates millions of cellular processes every second, and I held deep reverence for that intelligence. I thought, if I can connect with it, if I give it a plan, a vision, a model to follow, and hold that vision with absolute clarity, then I can surrender to that higher intelligence and allow it to heal me. You sound like a mystic, like someone surrendering their pain to a higher power. Yes, but that would be an oversimplification. I didn't just surrender. I wanted to partner with that intelligence. Now I pause to tell you something important. If this message is resonating with you, and you want to go even deeper into your personal growth, I invite you to visit my website, thepowerofyourmindx.com. The link will be in the description of the video. There you will find more speeches like this, designed to inspire you and help you transform your life. And now, we continue to co-create my healing. Even if I healed, I knew I'd still face bone loss, neurological damage, and pain. I was in uncharted territory, and whenever you challenge the status quo, whether in science, medicine, or religion, you're often dismissed as crazy. The 4 surgeons I consulted told me I must have hit my head too. But I didn't go through with the surgery. I went against all the medical advice. This was in 1986 in San Diego. No one was doing that back then, but I thought, if it doesn't work, I can always get surgery later. Let me try first. Step 1, connect to that inner intelligence. Step 2, don't let a single negative thought go unnoticed. Mysticism, at its core, simply means the pursuit of the unknown, and I was ready to take that leap. I had studied hypnosis. I had witnessed the power of the subconscious mind. And just before I left for grad school, my best friend's father gave me a book, Autobiography of a Yogi. It blew my mind. I thought, if this is true, then I understand nothing about reality. I read it, fought with it, threw it across the room. But something inside me said, take the leap. I went from a fast-paced life to being completely still. And I knew just enough about the body to know I had a chance. But those first 6 weeks, they were hell, a true dark night of the soul. But something changed. At around 6.5 weeks, something clicked. It was like hitting a golf ball perfectly in the sweet spot, effortless, precise. Suddenly, what used to take me 3 to 4 hours in meditation began to happen in much less time. Without realizing it, I was training my mind. I was learning to stay present, to observe my thoughts without judgment and gently bring them back into alignment. And then, something incredible happened. The pain started to fade. I began to feel parts of my body again. My motor system responded. My fingers moved. That was all I needed. I knew, deep within, that something was working. So I kept going. By 10.5 weeks, I was standing on my own 2 feet. Doctors wanted to fit me with a full body brace, but I didn't need it anymore. I had healed, and I couldn't go back to living the same life I had before. I sold everything, moved to the Pacific Northwest, and started over. But I kept asking myself, how did this happen? Has this happened to others? So I started researching. I dove into epigenetics, neuroplasticity, psychoneuroimmunology, quantum physics. And I began interviewing people who had experienced spontaneous remissions. people who had healed from conditions that were supposed to be permanent or fatal. And what did I discover? Every single one of them, in one way or another, had stopped being the person they used to be. They reinvented themselves. They changed their thoughts. They rewired their emotional patterns. They made different decisions. They stopped living by the memory of their past and instead began to create a new future. Some of them said things like, "I hate my job. I don't want to be a lawyer anymore. I want to be an artist." And in that decision, in that moment of alignment with their truth, something magical happened. They lost track of time. Their inner experience became more vivid than the outside world. They tapped into something deeper. That's when I became fascinated with the frontal lobe, the part of the brain responsible for intention, focus, and creative vision. I realized they were all engaging that part of their mind. They all believed in a power within them, something intelligent, something greater, not outside of them, but within. It wasn't about religion, it was about connection. Call it God, the universe, source, or infinite intelligence. They just knew it was real, and it was within them. Eventually, I was invited to participate in a documentary that reached millions. And suddenly, people all over the world started asking, "How did you do it? How can I do it too?" And that's when it hit me. This isn't just a time for gaining knowledge. It's a time for learning how to apply it. So I immersed myself in neuroscience. I started teaching workshops, seminars. At first, we saw small changes, but over time, the results became undeniable. We witnessed spontaneous remissions from stage 4 cancer, Parkinson's disease, multiple sclerosis, spinal injuries, cases that seemed impossible from a conventional perspective. And the skeptic in me, he couldn't believe it. So we decided to measure it. Today, we collaborate with the University of California, San Diego. We've conducted over 20,000 brain scans. We analyze genetic expression, blood metabolites, immune response, even tears and breast milk. Why? Because we want to understand what happens when a person is immersed in a sustained environment of change, when they truly transform from the inside out. Yes, we teach meditation, but not for relaxation or just for healing. We teach it as a tool for personal transformation. Because when you change your internal state, you heal. And science can no longer dismiss it as pseudoscience. The data is clear. Your nervous system can produce chemicals more powerful than any pharmaceutical. You can activate health-promoting genes and downregulate disease genes. But it all starts with one choice: the decision to change. In our events, we see how those neural circuits begin to rewire in hours, sometimes even minutes. We host large retreats with thousands of people from all over the world, and the information we share isn't just for understanding. It's meant to be applied. We ask participants to explain what they've learned to the person next to them. If they can't teach it, they haven't truly learned it. By recalling the knowledge and repeating the process, they reinforce it neurologically. Neurons that fire together, wire together. The more you understand why you're doing something, the easier the how becomes, because meaning activates the prefrontal cortex, the brain's CEO. And suddenly, your actions begin to align with your intentions. Your body and mind start to work as one, and knowledge becomes experience. That experience strengthens neural connections, but what remains afterward is emotion. When you feel empowered, grateful, inspired, you're teaching your body, biochemically, what your mind has already understood. Now that knowledge is no longer just in your head, it's in your body. It becomes a part of who you are. You embody the truth. You become it. This is our method. We measure every shift in the internal landscape. When someone sustains that emotional and mental state for 7 days, they are training their mind and body to operate in unison. And when the body knows how to do it better than the mind, It becomes effortless, natural. It becomes part of you. That's when you've become the knowledge. We evolve from being philosophers to becoming practitioners, to living as masters, from collecting knowledge to living it, to becoming it. You learn with your head, you apply with your hands, and eventually, you understand it with your heart. We've found that the real transformation comes when we transcend our limitations. Because by midlife, 95% of who we are is a set of memorized behaviors, beliefs, and emotional patterns. To change, we must unlearn that 95% to become more conscious, more awake. And when a person reprograms how they think, how they feel, and how they act, their biology must change. We've seen it time and time again in our week-long events, and it's not just a few individuals. There's a collective shift that occurs. A ripple effect. I believe most people don't change because they're inspired. They change because they're in pain. At some point, they get tired of being tired. They say, "Enough is enough. I have to change. I know there's another way." And they turn inward, not for a quick fix, but to finally face themselves. And when they do, they find something deeper than pain. They find power. And that's a powerful moment, because now the person no longer feels like they used to. Nothing in their external world can soothe what they're feeling. And that's when, for the first time, they begin to observe themselves. Metacognition. They feel so different from usual that they can see themselves almost as if they were someone else. And suddenly they say, "Oh my God, have you heard how you think? You're saying you can't, that it's too hard, that you hate that person." And then it hits you. Your thoughts have consequences. You start realizing, I complain all the time. I blame others, play the victim, judge, make excuses. I feel sorry for myself. It's like striking a match in the dark and realizing, I've lived most of my life in anger, in fear, in resentment. That's not love for myself. But no one is going to tell you that. You won't hear it from anyone else. It's only when your soul gives you that quiet nudge. That's when you finally know. This is your moment. And you help people see themselves, to observe not just what they think, but what they feel in that specific moment. And that is key, because we've seen that the brain changes the most when people go beyond thoughts like, "I can't, I'm tired. This is too hard. I want to give up. I'll never make it." When someone asks, "What's beyond this thought?" they're stepping into the unknown. Someone might say, "I just want to be happy. So why do I spend the whole day complaining?" And then they realize, complaining doesn't bring happiness. It steals it. That emotion they've been living in every day is just a chemical residue from the past. But what do you mean by that? If I feel something now, how is it from the past? Take frustration, for example. We feel frustrated because of a past experience, or a series of them. The stronger the emotional reaction, the more internal impact it has. That chemical change makes the brain take a mental snapshot. Like a freeze frame, that moment becomes a long-term memory. So when something similar happens, and you remember that old event, your body produces the same chemistry as if it were happening again. And the body, which is the unconscious mind, doesn't know the difference. To the body, it is happening again. You're reliving the trauma 50, maybe 100 times a day. A thought creates an emotion. An image triggers a reaction. And over time, you condition your body to be the mind of that emotion. The body, which was meant to serve you, becomes your master. And it starts searching for situations that reinforce that feeling. Because stress hormones, they're highly addictive. It's absolutely possible for people to use their problems as an excuse to stay addicted to emotions like frustration. Not consciously, but they do it. They become addicted to a life they don't even want. Here's a quote I wrote down based on what you said. People are emotionally addicted to a life they no longer desire. I'm paraphrasing, but the message is powerful. And what you're saying is this: if the mind and the brain aren't the same, even though they work together, then the brain is the hardware and the mind is the software. They both operate to keep us alive, always scanning the environment for danger, always looking for what could go wrong. And that constant vigilance, it becomes addictive too. That's beta brainwave activity, necessary for survival. But we enjoy it so much, we keep scanning, looking for threats, reasons to be frustrated. And in the end, it drains us, poisons us from within. When the body loses its natural balance, stress kicks in as an emergency response, trying to restore order. Every living being is built to handle short-term stress. A zebra running from a lion, that's intense. But once the danger passes, she returns to calm. The problem is that we, as humans, activate that emergency system, not because of real danger, but just by thinking about it. You remember an old argument. You imagine a worst-case future, and your body reacts as if it's happening right now. Your thoughts trigger emotions. Those emotions spark physical reactions, and you train your body to live in fear or anxiety, even when nothing's actually happening. And here's the most dangerous part. If you activate that stress response over and over without shutting it off, your body begins to break down, because no organism can live forever in survival mode. Thanks to the power of our frontal brain, we humans can launch that entire response just by imagining it. That's the real challenge. You think about the worst, you feel the fear, and your body starts programming itself like it's already happening. Then you ask, why am I like this? And the answer is, because of something I went through years ago. In other words, you're defining yourself by an event from the past that you haven't let go of. But here's the question: if our thoughts can make us sick, can they also heal us? In recent studies, people were asked to replace emotions like frustration, impatience, and resentment with elevated emotions from the heart, like gratitude, appreciation, and compassion. They were hooked up to heart coherence monitors. And the results, in just 3 days, practicing only 15 to 20 minutes per day, their levels of immunoglobulin A, a key immune marker, went up by as much as 50%. When the body feels like it's in an emotionally nourishing environment, it responds like it's truly living in well-being. Of course, like any addiction, the process has its ups and downs. When you stop feeding your body stress chemicals, it rebels. You get withdrawal symptoms. Emotionally, your body craves the anger or the frustration it's known for years. That's when most people say, I can't meditate. I'm too busy. This isn't working. But in truth, they're facing their emotional addiction. So instead of forcing it, the key is to train the body, to turn down the volume of those emotions, to calm down, to breathe slower, to enter a state of presence and heart-centered awareness. This training takes energy, intention, and consistent practice. But once you overcome that emotional dependency, you don't feel empty anymore. You feel joyful. The absence of suffering becomes well-being. And what's truly amazing is that this internal transformation leads to real physiological change in the body. So when we ask, is our natural state joy or frustration? The answer isn't simple. Stress seems automatic. It only takes one person, one moment, or one thought, and we slip right back into who we used to be. We are constantly on edge, living with the survival mind, disconnected from the present. Most people live in a state of mental overactivation. Their attention is trapped in the external world, in the body, and in time. How long will this take? When will this be over? But when you leave survival mode, you enter creation mode. And that state doesn't come from the mind. It comes from the heart. Living in stress throws the brain into chaos. You try to control, to predict everything, and that disorganizes your brain waves. Your heart gets out of sync. It's like slamming the gas and the brakes at the same time. You might look calm in a meeting, but inside, you're anxious, restless, at war with yourself. The solution? Bring your attention to the heart. Breathe slowly. Teach the body that the danger is gone. When you can stay in that state, your heart finds coherence, and when that happens, energy is released. Sometimes, the shift is so profound, your body and brain know the trauma is over. The nervous system resets. It's as if the heart tells the brain, "That's enough. You're safe now." And suddenly, instead of obsessively focusing on the problem, you're able to expand your awareness, to break free from the past. Because in the end, when you look at your life through the lens of fear or sadness, you're reliving a story that already ended, but your body hasn't let it go yet. So the question is, are you going to keep feeding that old story with your thoughts? Or are you ready to create a new one, starting from the heart? In beta state, we live in narrow focus, completely absorbed in the physical, in the material, in the known. But what if we did the opposite? What if instead of intensely focusing outward, we broaden our attention and place it on nothing? In that moment of perceiving space, something fascinating happens. When you're in pure perception, you're no longer thinking or analyzing. And the brain region responsible for analysis, the prefrontal cortex, shuts down. That shift moves your brain from beta to alpha, but not just any alpha. In that state, areas of the brain that usually function separately begin to unify. They synchronize. And when the brain is in sync, there's connection. That's coherence. When your mind becomes more orderly, you begin to feel more like yourself. Yes, breathing helps move from fight or flight to rest and restore. But it's this expanded focus, this awareness of nothingness, that allows us to move beyond the analytical mind. The analytical mind is the wall between the conscious and subconscious. And when you cross that wall, you access the operating system, where your beliefs, perceptions, attitudes, and habits live. So how do you do it in practice? You don't need your eyes open. In fact, for this kind of meditation, your eyes are closed. You watch the light show behind your eyelids. You focus on nothing, absolutely nothing. And that's when the magic happens. We've even practiced this with professional MMA fighters. It helped them break out of survival mode, where their focus was like that of a predator, and into a state of expanded awareness. We guided them from broad focus to narrow, then back to broad again, until they stayed there. And what did they report afterward? A profound calm in the analytical mind. Because when you focus on space, you stop focusing on thoughts. Now, doing this with eyes open is harder, but still possible. For most people, simply closing the eyes and letting go is enough to begin. When the brain enters alpha, you start seeing more mental imagery. You tap into creativity. And with training, you can recognize the different brainwave states. For me, theta is when the body is deeply relaxed, almost asleep, but the mind is wide awake. It's when the door between the conscious and subconscious is wide open, a hypnotic state. The most suggestible of all. So if someone can stay awake while the body is calm, they enter a sweet spot where they can truly change their reality. The formula is simple: relaxed but aware. And here's where a key player comes in: the heart. For a long time, I was purely rational, focused only on the brain, but studying heart coherence changed everything. Each time the heart enters a coherent state, it directly influences the brain. We use specialized sensors to measure this coherence. People wear them for hours while they eat, meditate, or sleep. They track the electrical impulses, and yes, there's a direct correlation with heart rate variability. When the heart aligns, it generates a measurable magnetic field up to 9 feet wide. That field becomes a kind of energetic drumbeat, informing and activating the brain. And the most incredible part, that field carries information. So when your heart is calm and your mind is alert, you can take this process to a higher level, what we call resonance. Resonance is when the brain operates across all wave states, delta, theta, alpha, beta, even high beta. And then, the gamma wave appears. That's superconsciousness, an expanded, powerful, elevated awareness. And it's not fueled by fear or stress or aggression. It's driven by something entirely different, a kind of bliss, a joy so intense that you don't want to leave that state. And when someone can maintain that with their eyes closed, they can train themselves to carry it into waking life. That's why we practice walking meditations. There was a moment in my life when I couldn't even lift a basket of laundry. And my wife looked at me and said, "You have to figure this out. We can't keep living like this." I didn't want surgery, but the doctor, a brilliant spinal orthopedist, told me, "Look, we've tried everything. There's nothing else I can do. It's time to operate." I asked him for 30 days. I was finishing my master's degree, just weeks from graduating. And then I thought, what am I doing? I wasn't using any visualization techniques. I wasn't using my mind at all. So I started looking, and I found something unusual: healing visualization. It wasn't widely known. The articles I read weren't scientific, more like testimonials, stories mostly from cancer patients. Remember those early studies? They would split people into 2 groups. One group did nothing. The other was asked to visualize healing. And they described the same kinds of imagery: Mickey Mouse hands, construction trucks, or the hands of God radiating white light. No one gave them specific instructions. Just visualize healing for a set time each day. And the results? The people who visualized got better outcomes than those who didn't. So I thought, I have to try this. Now, I couldn't imagine my injury disappearing. It was too abstract. So I took a spiritual approach. For me, it was Mickey Mouse hands, but infused with divine energy. Each night for about 30 days, I would spend 17 minutes imagining that the disc in my spine was like soft clay. Those hands, carrying that higher intelligence, would gently remove a layer of clay, night after night, until I started to believe it was actually dissolving. About 45 days later, I went in for another scan. The doctor put the film up on one of those old light boxes and said, "I don't know what to say. How are you feeling?" I told him, "Honestly, still a little off. There's a burning between my shoulder blades." And he said, "Well, it looks like your body just got rid of it. There's only a bit of calcium left. I can operate to clean it up if you want." I said no. Not long after that, I had full functionality again. My mind had to rise to meet the image I was creating. But it was also my mind that allowed me to peel away the layers, night after night. I rarely share this, and if I seem hesitant, it's because it sounds almost unbelievable. But in my own healing process, I did the exact same thing all over again. I visualized every vertebra being rebuilt, like smoothing cement across each one. If I was working on, say, T9, and suddenly thought, what if I end up in a wheelchair? I would stop completely and start over. Because I didn't want that intelligence, that consciousness that gives us life, to receive a confused signal. It had to be clear, no interference. Because I believe that the brain, in certain states, cannot distinguish between what's real and what's imagined, and that can produce real results. We conducted a study. Each person had a unique genetic background based on culture, family, ancestry. Genes produce proteins, and proteins determine the body's structure and function. After just 7 days, nearly 80% of the participants were expressing the same genes. producing the same proteins. That's unprecedented. People were changing. What emerged was a kind of collective consciousness reflected in the group's biology. Everyone evolving together, like a school of fish or a pack of animals. If you don't know it's possible to use visualization to heal an injury, you'll do what most people do. But if you know you can influence your own health, if you believe you play an active role, then you'll take action. It might not be like popping a pill. It takes effort, time, and a deep understanding of what you're doing and why. There can't be any false hope. That's why I didn't talk about this before. I didn't really understand how it worked. Some doctors told me, maybe your body turned it into gas and reabsorbed it. Maybe. But I never told them what I was doing. That was my personal experience, and I kept it to myself because it felt a bit too alternative, too out there. And while I'm not afraid of being different, I didn't want people thinking, if I can't heal, it's because I'm not good enough. If someone listens to me and thinks, but I still have cancer, or my back hasn't healed, I felt that was unfair. That's why I asked you why you chose to speak up, because I took a different route. But when I saw that this was truly changing people's lives, I couldn't keep it to myself anymore. I don't care what the academic critic in the back row thinks. They're going to judge me either way. I care about the people who are ready to learn. Those are the ones I speak to. Let the critics think what they want. It doesn't affect me. Between the real testimonies and the scientific evidence we've gathered, hundreds or even thousands of people who've healed, we now have more than enough proof. Chronic illness accounts for 95% of today's health issues, and most of them are not caused by genetics, but by daily habits, unconscious choices, and above all, lifestyle. And here's the key. If your lifestyle made you sick, a new lifestyle can make you well. Medication may give temporary relief or chemically stabilize your body. But if there's no emotional and physical balance, the change is only surface level. That's why we don't teach people to meditate just to heal. We teach them to meditate to transform. What are we trying to change exactly? Just 3 things: how you think, how you act, and how you feel. That's what makes up your personality. And your personality creates your personal reality. So if you want a new future, you have to leave behind the old version of yourself. That's the real work. Unlearning who you've become through repetition and reprogramming something new. A belief is just a thought you keep thinking. So start there. Think with intention. Focus your attention. That thought becomes a new program, a new inner voice, a new I can. That's the new you. Now you might have a great meditation in the morning. You feel connected, peaceful for 30 minutes or an hour. But if you spend the rest of your day frustrated, anxious, or afraid, there's no real transformation. That's why mental rehearsal is so powerful. Close your eyes and mentally practice how you'll act today. Your brain doesn't know the difference between a real experience and a vividly imagined one. If you're present, it thinks it's already happened. Over time, your mind stops being a record of the past and becomes a map to the future. Real change is when you think, act, and feel differently, while still living in the same environment. So you ask yourself every day, can I stay in my heart? Can I feel elevated emotions like gratitude, love, or excitement, no matter what's going on around me? To meditate is to become familiar with yourself, to know your unconscious impulses so deeply that you no longer react to them. So each day ask, how will I think today? How will I act? What would the best version of me do? And when you decide that no external event will rob you of your inner state, that's when the real challenge begins. You're no longer a spectator, you're in the game. Because if you keep living in fear or frustration, you're activating the same genes over and over. But if you sustain elevated emotions, You can convince your body that it's living in a completely different environment. And if your environment activates your genes, so do those emotions. Here's the most impressive part. When people combine clear intention with elevated emotion, 100% of them activate specific genes related to healing. How long does it take? In a 7-day event, participants accumulate up to 35 hours of meditation, including mental rehearsal, visualization, and intention-based practices. And the results? Incredible! Brainwave patterns in highly coherent gamma states, 3 standard deviations above normal. These are states of pure bliss and deep healing. When the autonomic nervous system is fully synchronized, the body responds with immediate restoration. We've seen people arrive in wheelchairs, like a young man with muscular dystrophy, and after entering one of these profound states, walk out on their own. It's not magic. It's the activation of deep brain systems, like the limbic brain, leading to a full-body reorganization, and science can't ignore it anymore. Researchers from Harvard, Stanford, and other top institutions are amazed. In a clinical trial, a 25% improvement is considered excellent. Here, we're seeing 70 to 80% of people experience profound physical and emotional shifts, all without medication. Even the microbiome, the internal ecosystem of beneficial bacteria, completely transforms in 7 days. How? Because if you're no longer the same person, your body can't stay the same either. Is this unique to our method? Not necessarily. Any deep and sustained meditation practice can produce extraordinary results, as long as you know what you're doing and why you're doing it. When you close your eyes and disconnect from your senses, you enter a highly receptive state. In that moment, you're no longer receiving information from the outside world, but from the field of energy around you. And if your nervous system is tuned correctly, you can translate that energy into real transformation. Even though nothing spectacular may happen outwardly, the biological effects are undeniable. After just 7 days, many people feel like they're living in an entirely different reality, though they've been in a regular event room just like any other. When we measure again, 1 week, 3 weeks, even 6 weeks later, we still see significant changes. Heart rate variability, HRV, continues to improve for weeks. That means the healing sessions, where people enter deep altered states, are producing long-lasting effects. During these sessions, participants reach extreme levels of activation, followed by waves of collective love and joy that linger for weeks or even months. Many say they feel like a completely new version of themselves. Brain coherence lasts longer. In some cases, even the gut microbiome changes. Not everyone maintains the benefits, of course. Those who stop practicing and return to their old environments often slip back into old emotions and habits, and some symptoms may return. But what I love most about our community is that many keep going. Not because they have to, but because they begin to see magic in their lives. Unexpected opportunities, impossible synchronicities that keeps them inspired. We've seen extraordinary cases. People with Parkinson's disease who, after reaching a high peak of gamma brainwaves, no longer show symptoms, and in many cases, the change is permanent. In fact, a language expert from the University of Central Oklahoma has been studying the transformation stories we share. Using artificial intelligence, he analyzed dozens of testimonies to identify common linguistic patterns. And the most repeated phrase was, "I felt it." That feeling comes in 2 forms. One is visceral. I felt like my heart exploded, like my head cracked open, like every cell in my body was vibrating like never before. The other is deeply emotional. I had never felt that kind of love. I don't even have the words to describe it. These types of experiences are often accompanied by a sense of detachment from the former self. Many people say, "I'm not that person anymore. I'm someone new." Those intense moments seem to leave a lasting mark, a kind of biological upgrade that can remain for a long time. I've always been a morning person. My belief is simple. If I can overcome myself first thing in the morning, the rest of the day becomes easier. That's why I carve out 2 hours each day to prepare. I don't always use all of it, but I like having that space while the world is still asleep. I organize, reflect, walk, focus my mind, and then I sit down and do the inner work. My purpose is to be a living example of what I teach. I believe experience is the best teacher. The rest of the day is filled with meetings, calls, learning. But my morning practice allows me to stay in a different emotional and mental state. What's my goal? To maintain that state of energy, creativity, compassion, and presence throughout the day. Because I know that's when synchronicities begin to show up. Those unusual opportunities that make me wonder, did I create this? Am I truly participating in the creation of my reality? At the end of the day, human connection is the most important thing we have. My outlook on life is quite simple. Live fully and understand that we are the architects of our reality. If I could sit with a true master, someone who's mastered themselves or their art, I would ask just one question. What's my blind spot? That's all I'd want to know. Of course, I could just ask my wife. She probably knows. Or my kids. They're always honest with me. Sometimes I just say, how am I doing? To me, true mastery is when you understand a process so well that you shorten the gap between intention and manifestation. That, to me, is incredible. That's my best understanding of it right now. That's my life philosophy. Each day is an opportunity to design a living masterpiece that reflects the best of who you are. And every word in that sentence matters. Opportunity, creation, masterpiece. When I think of a living masterpiece, I think of people who've had near-death experiences. It's fascinating. When they come back, something shifts deeply in their brain and in the way they see life. Being part of someone else's transformation is one of the most powerful and fulfilling experiences. When a person changes at a deep level and expresses their gratitude, it activates a natural empathy within us. We feel their emotion, and in that moment, we connect more as a community. We appreciate life more, and something inside us shifts as well. People who are driven by a mission, by a genuine purpose to improve lives, show the highest levels of motivation. We see that all the time in our work. Some people come looking for wealth, others for health, relationships, or mystical experiences, and that's fine. But at the core, we're all looking for the same thing: wholeness. Many people who've healed from illness tell me they would have never changed if it hadn't been for the pain they endured. Pain became the catalyst for awakening. And in the end, what everyone truly desires is to feel whole. Imagine feeling so complete, so full, that you no longer crave anything else. There is a clear connection between the heart and the brain. Coherence between the two creates a powerful synchrony. In that state, you stop wanting. And the most amazing part? When you're there, everything is okay. Everything flows. Now, if you're facing heart disease, blocked arteries, calcifications, or any condition, what would I recommend? Beyond my meditations, the first step is understanding the 3 types of stress: physical, chemical, and emotional. And to counter them, we need physical, chemical, and emotional balance. You can visualize your arteries being clear all you want, but if you're emotionally a mess, it won't work. The heart can't heal in survival mode. It has to be open, activated, in tune. Healing happens when you're in the right mental and emotional state. That's when visualization really works. But it's not about forcing, wishing, or striving. That comes from lack. And from lack, you can't attract abundance or health. The autonomic nervous system has the power to produce healing chemicals beyond what we can comprehend. But the how and the when, that's not up to us. Our only job is to prepare the environment. We've found that visualization works best with children, but in adults, what really brings about change is inner transformation. When you change your life, your body changes too. When you transform your heart, it responds. People tell me 80% of the tumor disappeared, and I wasn't even doing anything different. But in truth, they were. They were in a state of balance. Homeostasis? Because stress is simply the loss of inner balance. Most people don't say, "I'm going to heal." They say, "I'm going to return to the balance I lost 10 years ago." And that's a powerful intention. Of course, challenges will come. It's not about never reacting. It's about how quickly you come back. It's an inside-out approach, creating the right biological, emotional, and social conditions. Affirmation without emotion doesn't work. You can say, "I'm free, I'm healthy, I'm wealthy," 1,000 times. But if your body is programmed for suffering, it won't work. That thought won't even make it past your brainstem. But if you truly feel gratitude, then yes, your mind accepts it, believes it, and surrenders to it. I've made many mistakes. I've tried all kinds of techniques, methods, traditional paths. Today, I simply follow the data, the evidence, what actually works. If this message inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our motivational speeches. Every week, we upload content that can help you transform your life. See you in the next video.